I'm going to take a wild guess here, and I am going to throw out to you three different women. And I want you to think about which category, which woman are you today, right now? Are you thinking about homeschooling, considering pulling your kids from school and homeschooling them? Or maybe they're little and you're just saying, I don't know that I want to send them off to school. And so you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, I just don't think I'm confident enough to do this." Or maybe you are homeschooling and you're tempted to quit because you're not feeling confident. And you're saying, maybe my kids would be better off in school. I just can't do this. I'm not the type of person that can do this. Or possibly you are homeschooling and you're saying, I'm doing this, but I think more times than I would like to admit about whether I can do this, whether I have what it takes in order to homeschool them well. You're like, I'm doing it, I'm doing the thing, but I don't feel like I am doing it well. And so your confidence level is a little bit down and you rely upon external things to boost you up. Today's episode is going to be a heart to heart, kind of like a big sister talking to you, but this big sister, me, I really care about what you are doing when it comes to your homeschooling. We might have never met face to face, but I have a very strong suspicion that I know what you are like. And the moms that I was able to interact with at the conference last month, I was like, these are my people. These are the people that I talk to. And it was such a blessing. So even if you and I never get to meet face to face on this side of eternity, just know that I am rooting for you because I know what homeschooling has done for my family. And this lack of confidence, oftentimes moms will use it as an excuse in their homeschooling, whether it is the excuse not to start, the excuse to quit, or the excuse not to take things to new levels and to really lean into the education that your kids deserve and that will really set them up for their future properly. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's have a heart to heart, friend.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Lee Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
A lack of confidence or a lower level of confidence can sound a little bit like this. It could sound like, oh, I could never. Or, that's good for you that you homeschool, but I can't do that. Or, I couldn't ever do that. That's not what I can do. Or, I tried it and it just didn't work. How about, I don't have what it takes to homeschool? Or this very popular, famous one that says, I'm not patient enough to homeschool, or I'm not blank, insert whatever you want. Typically, it's patience that a lot of moms will say. I said that too. And I'll be the first one to admit that all of these were me. The negative self talk that I had about homeschooling prior to homeschooling, just with my small little glimpse of it, I just knew that I was impatient, that I was feeling like I was at my wits' end just with motherhood in general. And now they're going to be home with me all day, every day, and I'll never get a break. That was me. I used to have such self negative talk, and I would say, oh, I couldn't do that. I can't homeschool. And it was only when I addressed the root causes of this lack of confidence and I let go of that self imposed negative thoughts about homeschool. That is when my homeschool began to feel fun. I began to have freedom in my homeschool. And guess what? That carried over to my children. They began to enjoy education. They began to feel free that so much more of life is education, and the things that they're interested in are okay. I don't have to dictate everything that they need to do. And so we found freedom and fun and just even patience and joy and love and just confidence in homeschool when I began to address the root cause. Most people are not confident when they start homeschooling. Most moms are not. But let's really think about that. How many times are you fully confident when you begin something for the very first time? Let's say with baking. I know that sourdough was a big rage. I don't know if it still is or not, but just think about anything when it comes to maybe baking something that is more than just your typical, maybe chocolate chip cookies. Or maybe when you begin exercising, whether that is running or jogging or swimming or lifting weights or aerobics, you weren't very confident in it. Maybe you are getting into some art projects. You want to learn how to watercolor. Your confidence isn't very high when you start. How about music lessons? You decide, I want to learn how to play the piano or I want to learn how to play the guitar. Do you walk into your first lesson fully confident that you can do it? Maybe you do, and you walk out of that lesson thinking, oh no, I've got a lot to learn. How about in motherhood? When you first became a mother, very first child, how confident were you? You're like, oh yeah, I got this all figured out. If you do, you're a rarity. Most of us do not. Most of us are like, oh my goodness, I now have to figure this all out. Same thing goes with homeschooling. Most people, now there are some people out there. I've got one child who is pretty much fully confident in everything that this child does. And okay, so there are personalities out there, but most of us, and most of us when it comes to homeschooling, even if we're confident in other areas of life, we lack the confidence in this because it feels like such a big risk. Here I am saying that I am going to educate and set my child up for the future. And so it feels very risky in today's culture because we have the school, we have public school, we have private school, we've got tutors, we've got higher education of colleges and universities. And so we think, wow, ooh, I got to measure up to all of those. And that will take your confidence down a couple of notches. Today, I want to share with you three main areas that I see where the lack of confidence comes from. First, I want to talk about the fact that the lack of confidence comes from fear. And what we need to do now is turn to what does the Bible say about fear? Philippians 4:13. Now, it's not specifically about fear, but like let's also talk about God's faithfulness in things, right? His strength and his faithfulness to walk you through what he has called you to. How about Philippians 4:13? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. I could go on and on. You can also check out Matthew 11:28-30, Psalm 127, Romans 8:28, 1 Thessalonians 5:24, when it says, the one who calls you is faithful and he will do it. Did God call you to homeschooling your children? Maybe it took you a while, like me. It took me a few years to hear God's calling. I had to experience some things. I had to experience what life was like without homeschooling my kids in order for me to be receptive to him calling me. He says in Hebrews 13:5, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Our lack of confidence with homeschooling comes from fear. And fear is not of God. First point I want to make here is that you have the fear of not being qualified. Yeah? You want to raise your hand for that one? Yes. We have a misconception that as a homeschool mom, you need to have a certain level of expertise in every single subject. Let's break that down and think about most likely you're comparing yourself to the school system. So, elementary, yeah, those teachers all teach a variety of subjects. Maybe in the higher elementary, they might kind of get a little more specific, but I can guarantee you that you can teach all of those different subjects to your children. This is when the fear kicks up a notch. When our kids get to middle school, we're like, ooh, maybe I can do it. And then high school, we're like, oh no. Our confidence tends to plummet because we say, I'm not an expert in math. I'm not an expert in science. I'm not an expert in history. I'm not an expert in language arts and English and writing. And so we think we have to give up on homeschooling. And I did do an episode about quitting. There's going to be a bunch of episodes that are going to directly link to today's episode in the show notes. I highly encourage you that as you're listening, you're like, oh, okay, I need more of this. So there's going to be ones that are going to be specific to the different things that I talk about. But the first fear is that of not being qualified. You doubt whether you have the ability to meet your child's need when it comes to education. Did you doubt your ability to meet your child's needs when they were a baby? Probably. If this is your firstborn, you probably did. I remember questioning and doubting, do I have what it takes to meet all of her needs? That whatever she needs with the feeding and the all the eating and the sleeping and just attending to her. I very much lacked confidence until I started doing it. And if you have multiple children, you'll find that you have a lot more confidence with that newborn baby as you get to your second child or third child and so on. You're like, we got this. Of course, the kids are all going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a uniqueness to them. And some babies are more easygoing and some are, we'll just say, not as easygoing. But you don't doubt your ability as much because you're like, I've been there, done that. We have walked through this, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in just a minute or two. So hang in there for that part. But we have a fear of not being qualified. And in episode, I believe it was 312, I talked specifically more about this. So that is going to be in the show notes for you to listen to in the fact of where I really see education going. But you think that, oh, I don't have these certain degrees. I can't do that. Let me tell you, nobody knows your child better than you do. Nobody cares about them more than you do. Therefore, maybe you feel I'm not qualified to teach them how to read. Guess what? Then go and get those quote unquote qualifications. Those qualifications mean you don't have to go to college and get a degree. What it means is you do some research. You talk to other homeschool moms. You really dig in and find out what is going to be possibly the best curriculum or program or best age to introduce. And maybe you want to take a more laid back approach. And you find others that have done that as well. And so you build your confidence by learning from them and then watching and learning as you teach your child. So if you do not feel qualified, friend, none of us feel qualified. Remember I said when you start something, you don't always feel qualified? God doesn't make sure that you are qualified to do this. He is going to walk alongside you. Tuck those verses that I just said. Hopefully, maybe you've written them down. If not, go back after this episode and write down those verses so that you can pull them out when you need them. He is there for you. God wants to see you succeed, but He also wants to see how He can work in you and grow you and change you and the sanctification that He will do through you. So do not fear not being qualified enough to begin homeschooling or to continue homeschooling. You will be as qualified as you need to be. And I know that sounds like, oh, I don't know. Stay with me here. The second fear is the fear of lack of being perfect. Now, this is a misconception that you believe that there is a perfect way to homeschool in general. And so you are trying to find that out. Let me find the perfect homeschool mom, and then I'm just going to copy exactly what she does. You know, her homeschool, it might actually be, say in air quotes, perfect, because it's perfect for her family for right now, this year. And I love to be able to learn from other homeschool moms. You're right now listening to me. And so I love to get ideas and say, let me try that out in my family and see if that'll work in my homeschool. Sometimes I hear things from other homeschoolers and I'm like, oh, that definitely would not work for my homeschool and my family. Well, then just push that aside. Don't do that. But you'll hear things you're like, oh, I wonder if that'll work. And you try it out. Sometimes it is the perfect addition to your homeschool for that year. Sometimes it's not. And you find that out maybe quickly, or it might take a little bit of time, and then you go ahead and adjust. You say to yourself, well, if I can't do homeschooling perfectly, then, and I might mess up, I'm just going to give up. Or if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not even going to begin. Can I just tell you that there is no homeschool family out there that is doing things perfectly? There is no public or private school that is doing everything perfectly. There is just right now, and you homeschooling your children in the best way possible, which you might say, oh, is perfect for us for right now. What was perfect for you last year might have been perfect then, but not perfect this year. And what you do right now might not be perfect next year. And that's okay. We adjust. But there is a misconception that everything has to be perfect. I have to have the perfect homeschool room. I have to have the perfect homeschool room decorations and it has to be set up and I have to either spend a lot of money or I have to have all the perfect curriculum or I can't begin or it's not worth me continuing or my homeschool isn't good enough because I don't have those things. Those are all lies. Again, go back to those Bible verses, okay? Those are going to be essential to working on the root causes. The number 3 root cause fear that I tend to see, and stay with me here, then I do have a key point I want to make before we close out today's episode. But there is a huge fear about long term success of homeschooling. There are homeschoolers out there that have graduated from homeschool, but there aren't as many as there will be if you stick with it. Because there, as you have probably seen, a growing movement of homeschoolers. And in years to come, there could be millions of homeschool graduates every single year. Now, there might be like lower millions now, or at least birth thousands, hundreds of thousands of homeschoolers every single year. But in your entire even county or state or country, it's hard really sometimes to connect with those others. If you find homeschool families that have graduated homeschoolers and you enjoy the success, you appreciate their grown children, cling to them. Sit down, listen to them, ask them questions, observe, and see what you can do, and allow that success that they have to give you confidence. You haven't seen the end result of your homeschool, so you don't think it's possible. But guess what? The end comes from doing. So let's go back to that list of things I mentioned earlier. If you're going to start maybe an art class or music lessons, or you want to learn how to swim really well, or you want to go ahead and do maybe a triathlon, or you want to lift weights, or you want to bake better, or you want to be able to bake sourdough or cupcakes or something like that. You want to start your own little bakery, whatever it is. The success that you will have comes from actually doing it. You don't know if any of those things will have success, but you feel like the homeschooling of your children is riskier than that. And yeah, maybe it is. But the lack of confidence, let me just tell you just straight. If you aren't feeling confident, you just have to do the thing. Just put your head down and just homeschool. Confidence comes with time. Confidence comes in anything with time. I hope you're getting that point. I've kind of roundabout said, but I'm just going to just say it to you straight. You just have to decide this is what I'm doing. This is what God has called me to, and He is faithful to what He has called me to. And that doesn't mean that those that stop homeschooling are unfaithful to God and what He has called them to. That is their own story. This is your story right now that you are writing. Just know that the end result, you're not going to know if the end result is worth it until you actually do it, because you won't get to the end result if you don't do the thing. So just put your head down, do the homeschool, this day in and day out, whatever that looks like for your family right now in this season. There is nothing special about me or any other homeschool families that have graduated homeschool children. Guess what? The only thing that stands us out, the only thing about us to talk about is the fact that we just didn't give up. We didn't stop. We put our heads down and we just did it day in and day out. And if you talk to any parent, especially moms who spend most of the time with the homeschooling, if you say, well, if you ask them a little bit about, they're probably going to tell you the time flew by because during the days that is very long, the days do go very slow and the years do go very slow. I remember some years going so slowly. But now that I don't have to be as hands-on, I've done the work. I've done the work. And so now I have a high school 11th grader, and he does most of the work. I've done the work. I've laid that foundation. And so, yes, we do lessons and we do some things together and everything. And I'm still kind of guiding and providing opportunities for him. But the only thing we'll say maybe special about anybody who has graduated a homeschooler is the fact that they didn't give up, is the fact that they just did it. And you wonder to yourself, will my kids be prepared for the future? Well, that's up for you to decide. That's up for you to figure out. How am I going to prepare them? Are they on a college track? Do I want them to take some type of gap year? What kind of experiences do I want them to have? Just this morning, I dropped my 16-year-old off at a location so that he could do some hands-on learning and shadowing and some experience, just so that he can be exposed to something else. I brought him recently to a trade school just to take a look around, and so that he in his mind can picture it and picture himself possibly in that, and getting some information and ultimately letting him decide. Which sounds really crazy, right? When you're like, "Oh, I've got a 5-year-old and I'll let them decide sometime in 11 years." Well, we still have a little bit of time, but it's exposing them to the possibilities for their life and then praying for them, praying with them, encouraging and teaching them how to pray for themselves and their own futures and being able to discern a good and right path for them. So here's my key point, and that is that confidence comes as you do the homeschooling. And then you begin to see little wins. Look for those little wins. Look for you saying, "Hey guys, let's do this read aloud." And the kids saying, "Yay, all right," running together to listen to this read aloud. That doesn't mean you might not have some kids that are a little bit grumpier about such things. But you say, "Hey, let's go take a walk. Let's go on this field trip. Let's work on our spelling. Let's take a look at this child that is learning now, or the math facts have clicked." Use just those little wins. When you go and look over maybe their work, maybe they did a math worksheet and you're like, "Wow, they're doing so much better. Things are starting to click." And when you see the relationships that the kids have, if you have multiple children that they have with each other, if you see their ability to walk through the world with their own confidence, with the knowledge of how to navigate themselves well in, say, a bank or in a grocery store or any type of setting, those are wins. Look at those little wins and just know that your confidence comes as you do it. And you have to do it in order to gain the confidence. If you are struggling with this, I don't know if you know, but I do offer a mentorship program where you and I get to sit down over Zoom. We get to meet face to face through the technology of the internet and talk about things. And in that first session, we're just going to lay out all the problems. I'm going to give you some solutions, and then we're going to follow up with that. And we're going to meet again, and we're going to kind of troubleshoot what went well, what maybe needs to be tweaked a little bit more. And I love those sessions. I love to be able to talk and to hear where you're stuck, and then to give you some pointers and some ideas on the direction to take. If you're interested in doing that and working with me, I'd love to work with you. You can go to littlebylittlehomeschool.com/mentorship. The link is in the show notes, along with a bunch of other episodes that are going to support and encourage you, just like this one that comes alongside this topic today. You might not feel confident now, but I can tell you right now, as your kids get older and you start to graduate them, you're going to feel confident and you're going to look back and you say, "I am so glad that even though I had fear, even though I had worry and anxiety, I kept doing it." So I want to encourage you to lean on God, go to those Bible verses, pray each day, every single morning before you start homeschool, and just to continue to put your head down and do the thing.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.